Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Hope you had a good week. And today, of course, is the Spiritbox review. Told you it was coming. Here it is. So let's just jump into it. So the album is finally out in all its glory, and here we are finally going to take more of an in-depth look into it. Now, before getting started, I gotta say, going into this album, I was worried. Now, you might be wondering, why would you be worried? Well, with all the singles we've had out come from this band, masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece, it almost seemed like it's too good to be true. This album surely couldn't knock it out of the park. I mean, the singles, of course, they're great, like some better than others, but could a whole album be just as good? So that was the mindset going into this. Now, a week's gone by, I've listened to it multiple times now, and what I can say is, yeah, I'm impressed. This is a very impressive album. But let's just dive right in. So the first track we have is Sun Killer, which I thought was a really nice crescendo of a track that really built up, gave us a lot of elements, but not too much, you know. It gave us just enough to keep us on our toes, to give us that taster of what's to come, because, you know, that's how I feel about opening tracks. They sort of give that overture of what the album is going to bring, but holding back on the really good stuff until later. And that's exactly what it did. And it led really well into the next track, Hurt You, which was one of the singles that came out previously. And it was heavy, really massive sounding guitars, getting you in the mood, which I think is a really great way to do things, especially on the second track in. Let's get the energy up, boys. Let's get things moving. And that's exactly what this track did, from front to back. A lot of energy, a lot of impact, and just an overall nice second track. And with Sun Killer kind of acting as sort of the introduction to Hurt You, it just works as a really beautiful 2-track opener. Next, we get Yellow Jacket, which I did do a reaction just very recently, so I'll link you to that if you want to get my more in-depth talk about it. But pretty much, it was Sam Carter sounding the best he has in a long time, and the chemistry between the two vocalists is just something that I never imagined would be this good. Now we get to the track Summit, which I guess is the first sort of break. Now what I noticed about this album when listening to it multiple times is that Spiritbox are very good at creating sort of a 3-track crescendo. We had Sun Killer, Hurt You, and Yellow Jacket. Felt very well put together, very much energy-wise going up and then staying in that area. And then with Summit, we come back down, we calm it down, we breathe, we get a bit softer. And then from there, we build it up again until we reach the track Silk Strings. Now, for the first sort of calmer track, The Summit, did a great job really showing off the versatility of Courtney's voice, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And overall, just, again, really nice crescendo, really beautiful lyricism, and just building again. And the Summit being the Summit, we reach the Summit and enter the Secret Garden. It's kind of feeling like an adventure here, kind of like a roleplay adventure. And the Secret Garden, again, I did a reaction for that. I'll link it up as well. But pretty much Secret Garden, very genty, very dissonant in the notes, but it does have a very open chorus that's quite reminiscent of like early 2000s sort of rock music, the best way I can describe it. But still enjoyable. In my opinion, it wasn't my favorite track, but I still thought it was a solid track. It was a solid track. I mean, every track on this album was really solid. Next, we go into Silk String, which another banger, keeping that energy high. And if you thought the energy couldn't get any higher, then it led straight into Holy Roller, which I think everybody knows this track by now. The plethora of reviews, reactions for this track is in abundance. But of course, Holy Roller, great track. And they also did like sort of a bonus version of it where they had your man Ryu from Crystal Lake. Great added thing. I wish he did more in the track than just, you know, that one section, but still really fun. And after that, we move into the title track, Eternal Blue. Bring the energy once again back down, because let's be honest, we need it. After the tracks like Silk in the String and Holy Roller, we need to bring it back down, get the heartbeat to slow a bit. And once again, it did its job, and it slowly transitioned us into the next track with the energy levels, which was We Live in a Strange World. Note about this track is that they go slightly different on it. It feels kind of more like a poppier sound, which I really enjoyed. The only thing I can say is I wish they did more of that in the track, or just dedicated an entire track to being a bit more of that popular thing, because it is only a 2-minute 48 track. And with a lot of bands, they can definitely just delve into that and retain that very soft, dreamy atmosphere. But this track eventually then transitions back into their more iconic, heavier sound, which I don't mind. But I definitely wish that maybe they could have just stuck with that sort of dream poppier sound for the entire track. I thought that would have been cool. But anyway, moving on, we have the track Hell. I never know how to pronounce this. Halcyon, which again, creating that energy up. It was actually really heavy, and not gonna lie, it really reminded me a lot of Periphery when it comes to the writing, at least on the guitar parts. Definitely like a P3 album, like sort of level. It really brought me back to those days. I think a specific track I could say is Habitual Line Stepper. But the point is, it was sounding really, good old school sort of gent, really bringing me back to those good old days of like just being heavy, choppy, all the good stuff. And then from there we get Circle of Me, which of course, another reaction I have up there. I did a lot of reactions for this band. You can tell I like the band. Circle of Me was great. It was the first real single, I would say, for this new album, and it was really catchy. The guitar sections were really nice and chunky, rhythmic, groovy, and the chorus was just so on point. It's like, if you want a more anthemic chorus, I think this is like probably the best like chorus on the album. It's so anthemic and big and just open. And then we end on the track Constance, which it was one of the ones I actually didn't do a reaction for. I think I was really busy at the time. But this is very mellow. We're going out on a very mellow note. It's a very harrowing note because if I recall, this track was talking about a member of the family that got dementia. And if you've ever experienced that, it's probably the worst thing in the world. Me personally, I'm thankful I haven't had to go through that. But yeah, it was deep. It was dark. And it left on a very harrowing note. So the overall album definitely had sort of its peak in the middle and then brought it back down again. I think definitely the peak for this album was Holy Roller, which was the 7th track, which I think flow-wise makes perfect sense. But anyway, let's talk about more specifics. So flow-wise, I thought it was great. I think every track flowed into the next one really well. It never felt abrupt. It almost felt natural. And sometimes I genuinely didn't know a track had finished and the next one had started. Perfect example, Sun Killer to Hurt You, or Eternal Blue to We Live in a Strange World, and then going into Halcyon. I could not distinguish when one track ended and the next started, so I thought that was really cool. It shows flow was there. Same with Silk and the Strings to Holy Roller. Once again, really well done on the flow wise. And when you have flow like this, it means that you're really engrossed in the album and you never feel like you're taken out. You can just like live in the album, and it's so nice. Connects, which is what you want on an album. Might as well talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the vocals. And I think Courtney is probably one of the best female vocalists in the, I guess, underground gent deathcore scene at the moment. She kills it. And that's not an understatement. She actually kills it. Because for a lot of deathcore vocalists or gent, anybody in that genre, in those genres, you can excel in one field, like let's say screaming or growling. But usually that doesn't really correlate when you try to do proper singing. An exception, of course, that I so highly revere is, of course, Phil Bozeman. He's one of those breakout vocalists in deathcore who can actually sing really well. And Courtney is just the same. She has these really disgusting vocals that you hear on tracks like Holy Roller, Yellow Jacket, Hurt You. But then when you go to tracks like The Summit or Eternal Blue or Constance, you realize she has so much depth and timbre to her singing voice as well that cannot be compared. I can't think of many people who can do that and do it so cleanly. She's very talented. Very, very talented, to say the least. And having her sort of shepherd us through the entire album was a complete joy. I loved every minute of it, and I couldn't get enough of the voice. It's a great voice. I can only really compare it to maybe Tatiana, I think, from Ginger, but in my opinion, I still put Courtney above that. And finally, I want to talk quickly about the mix. Now, the mix for me was overall really good. If I'm right, the drums were Superior Drummer 3. At least that's from what I recall when Holy Roller came out. I think that was Superior Drummer. For obvious reasons, we were in lockdown, couldn't get a drummer. If these are live drums, they're sounding great. However, I do feel like sometimes on the softer tracks, we could have reduced on the compression a bit, because these very intimate moments on these softer tracks could have done well with just having the drums, the compression brought down, having a bit more of a lighter, softer touch on the compressor. I think it would have created a lot more atmosphere and a lot more intimacy in these moments. But definitely on the heavier side, yeah, they were sounding great. The guitar tones were sounding crunchy and gritty, but not overbearing with saturation and gain, which meant that you got a lot of clarity out of the guitars. And if I'm right, they were using an Abasi guitar, great for this sort of style. It sounded so tight, so good. Can't get enough of it. But anyway, those are pretty much my thoughts on this album, and what can I say is that the wait was worth it. It was worth it. I was worried going into this album initially because I was like, nah, they can't pull it off. They couldn't make it that good. But in reality, they kind of did. They kind of did. I'm really impressed. I see this as definitely an album of the year contender, if not the album of the year thus far. I'm gonna make a gander here, just a small one. And if I'm right, you gotta subscribe. But pretty much, I can see some of these tracks potentially even getting nominated in the Grammys. Whether that's actually gonna happen, that's up in the air. But some of these tracks I could definitely see as like a Grammy contender for the metal category. But if that happens, well, all I can say is I told you so. But if it doesn't, well, I still think this was an amazing experience, amazing album. It just, they did it. They teased us with all these singles, and then when it finally came down to putting out that album, it killed. I loved it. And especially for a debut album. Like, I don't know many debut albums that can come out this good. So with all that, I'm going to be giving this 9 out of 10. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. But anyway, write down below, what did you think of the album? What was your favorite track? What was your least favorite track? Rank it down below. And besides that, if you enjoyed this review, give it a like. And of course, subscribe to keep updated on all the other content coming out. And with all that being said, stay hydrated and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.